Ancient philosophers tried to figure out what is the fundamental nature of existence. What is there, really? Of course they observed things like plants and stone and people, like we do, but what they wanted to know was, what is it that makes one thing that thing and not something else? Why is a goat, and what is it made of? If a house is made of wood and bricks, how is it a house? Pythagoras, most famous for his theorem about triangles, thought that the fundamental thing about reality is actually numbers. Things are related to each other in ways that can be expressed with numbers and geometry. This sounds very similar to what some physicists and especially mathematicians might say today. Plato was very much impressed by Pythagoras. His academy taught formal sciences like arithmetic and geometry because such rational disciplines were the way to knowledge. You may recall that Plato was unhappy about the changing world of our senses and thought that knowledge could only be about what are unchanging eternal truths. These were ideas which one could rationally understand, but never observe empirically. We may observe some goats and realize that they are all goats, in that what they have in common is that they reflect the idea of goat. The idea is what makes them goats and is what is important. The material or stuff that the individual goats in this world of our senses are made of does not matter much to Plato. Yes, these individual goats are in this world made of the stuff of our world, but the idea itself is not in our world. All the goats in the world could disappear, yet the idea itself would still exist. We are able to recognize their goatness, that they reflect the idea of goat, because before our births in this corporeal realm, our souls have somehow witnessed the idea of goat in the realm of ideas. It is not hard to understand why Plato's view is called idealism, or objective idealism if we want to be specific. It is called objective because Plato believed that the ideas exist independently. Even if we did not exist, the ideas still would. It may be worth noting that you should distinguish between Plato's own philosophy, Platonism, and especially Neoplatonism. These can all be rather different ways of thinking, and I have noticed that sometimes people fail to realize that. While Plato's metaphysical views in their original form probably have few supporters anymore, there are still mathematical Platonists who believe that mathematical concepts do exist in some supernatural way. Certainly it seems that even though we do not observe perfect geometric shapes anywhere, we can still understand the concepts. When your math teacher tells you to imagine that the scribble she drew on the whiteboard is a perfect triangle, you are able to do that, regardless of what is actually on the whiteboard. And perhaps more importantly, the universe does seem to obey mathematical rules and equations. I can understand the appeal of mathematical Platonism, even if at the same time it does seem very odd to think that the concepts themselves would exist somehow independently of the observable universe that they are used to describe. There is also a form of idealism that is subjective. During my exposition of epistemology, I already mentioned Bishop Berkeley's view. It is sometimes called solipsism. Solipsism, from Latin solus, alone, and ipse, self, is the view that one cannot be certain of the existence of anything other than one's own thinking mind, or, in the case of Berkeley, the view that only minds exist. our observations appear to be about reality outside our minds, but the observations themselves are mental phenomena. The world of our observations is only consistently existing because it is being observed. Esse est percepi. To exist is to be observed. Berkeley had faith that his Christian God is observing everything, thus guaranteeing the consistency of our observations. This kind of thinking is called idealism because it only posits the existence of entities that are internal to minds, or those minds themselves, which I'm guessing exist only because God is observing them. But who is observing God? This should be enough to give you some idea of what idealism is. Next up is the other important form of monism, materialism. Some pre-Socratic philosophers have surprisingly modern-sounding views. Instead of appealing to supernatural ideas like Plato, some of them thought that everything was fundamentally material. Leucippus and his student Democritus even had a theory of atoms. The atoms of Democritus's atomism are the fundamental building blocks of everything. The word atom literally means indivisible, because if they were divisible, they would not be the basic building blocks. In addition to atoms, there's also empty space where these atoms move, but emptiness is not considered a thing, only the absence of anything. So atomism is a monistic theory in ontology. It must be understood that this ancient atomism is not the same as the atomic theory of the 19th century, even if the latter got the name of atoms from the ancients. It did turn out that the atoms found by scientists were not in fact indivisible, so they are not the atoms of ancient atomism. The atoms of ancient atomism seem much like billiard balls bouncing from each other, interacting mechanically that way. They do not contain any of the features of scientific atomic theory like electric or magnetic force, because such things obviously had not yet been discovered. Despite all the changes to the details, materialism has endured and become the prevailing view of science in the form of physicalism, the idea that everything can be described in the language of physics. Because there is no way to test whether the supernatural entities posited by idealism actually exist, science has to assume at least a methodological, if not metaphysical, naturalism, where only material entities that can be observed are considered real for the purposes of scientific research. Technically, others could exist as well, but if they cannot be observed or tested even in principle, they are considered to be outside the scope of science. This means that the scientific worldview can only be materialistic, as nothing else can be given scientific justification. But that doesn't mean there aren't other philosophical views that try to combine materialism with something else. That is what I will discuss in the next video. See you then. If you wish to support my channel, click thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already.